Welcome to the Clive Barker podcast, episode 40. So before we get into introducing our episode, there's a few little bits of news since we recorded episode 40 about Hellraiser 4. I guess the first one is that Clive's office started the official Lament configuration Facebook page.
Yes. The Facebook page for the official Lament configuration is facebook.com/Hellraiser Mystery Box altogether.
Yeah.
That's the one that's the official page for Clive Barker's Lament configuration.
And so I think the idea is kind of tying it to the Screamin' Mystery Box.
Yeah, that you can find still, I think, on Amazon and places like that. Because if you go to realclivebarker.com, which is the Clive Barker store online, he has an affiliated Amazon store with affiliated Amazon links, and you can find Hellraiser Mystery Box there. Yeah. Which I think it's a screaming plastic 6-faced box that you put together. It's hollow, so.
and that's fine, when it's not as nice as the more solid ones that you can buy.
Yeah,
I had a screaming box, for quite a long time. I got that when I was in high school. But yeah, I'm a lot happier with the one that I have now.
It might be the only actually officially licensed.
What about?
No, wait. There's the NECA.
Yeah, and I have one of those too. But mine I bought used on eBay, and the brass is starting to peel up, so it's got all these jagged brass points.
Yeah, it's very common. Nobody was happy with the NECA version. I personally think they used this weird brown-like patina on the box, which just made it look kind of orange. And then it was a common complaint from everybody that I know that when they bought the box and then the brass panels started peeling away. Yeah, that was a common complaint. That used to happen also with other boxes that were made by box makers on the internet. That they would just epoxy the panels to the wood. Yeah. And then, of course, if you live in a place like Florida or if you live in a place like in Alaska, it should be fine. But if you live in a place with humidity and moisture, of course, the wood is going to start, expanding and contracting. That's just going to crack, and the panels are going to peel. But with the NECA box, almost everybody that I knew, told me, okay, the box just peeled. I have it for like 2 months. So I thought that, that was unfortunate.
And that NECA one is a lot of money for something that's going to do that, because when it not only does it peel, but it gets all pokey, and there are these tiny slivers of metal that jab into your skin, and it feels like irritating.
Yeah, all part of the Hellraiser experience, I guess.
Yeah.
You put your finger on the box, and then blood gets on the panels, and then who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah. So, I visited the official Lament configuration site. I think it's a little fragmented. I kind of would rather see everything on official Hellraiser, but it's all right.
Yeah, I agree. I think Lament configuration is a part of Hellraiser, so it makes sense that it would be more centralized on this Hellraiser page.
And then there's going to be a lot of cross-sharing of stuff between those, and stuff from Clive Barker to the official Lament configuration to the official Hellraiser page. And
yeah, I guess they're just trying to come up with official pages for these little iconic things in Clive Barker's body of work. Yeah. Just so nobody else can take over those things and say, oh, this is the official configuration page.
Yeah, the same reason that we created an Occupy Midian like page that we never use. We just use the group because we want to interact with people.
Or the Clive Barker's Nightbreed, the Cabal Cut page, which exists, but there's there. We just started that because we didn't want anybody else to start a Cabal Cut.
Yeah, we made that for Russell and for the official people, so that so that somebody else wouldn't do it and then they'd lose control of it.
Yeah.
Yep. So our next thing, this is pretty cool. Christine McCorkindale, otherwise known as Shuna Sassy in Nightbreed, surfaced recently on Occupy Midian. First, her sister Linda showed up and said hi, and she's like, Shuna Sassy, and everybody's like, oh wow, hey, and she said, yep, she's my sister. Mm-hmm. And then the next day, Christine, she goes by Chris McCorkindale, showed up on Occupy Midian, and she's really, I thought she would be more reclusive, and because we haven't heard from her until now, but she's really excited and gung-ho about Occupy Midian and Nightbreed.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's great because it's great that she showed up because she's such an important character in the film, and then of course the comics.
Yeah. Oh, and she had thanked Paul Alexander, I think, for bringing her in. So,
oh wow.
However he found her, thank you, Paul, because that's awesome.
That's a good part of the community. I mean, when you get people together, things happen. And
yeah,
there were people like I think it was Philippe O'Neill who found like the actress that played Rachel, right?
Yeah, Catherine Chevalier.
Yeah. So, people are looking out for these things, and, they point them out to the right place, and there they are.
Yeah, he found her Twitter account, but I think she hadn't been using it.
Right.
And then her brother contacted me on Facebook because of Occupy Midian, asking if I could help get her into a screening. And,
right.
Yeah, and so then I put her in touch with Russell, and we eventually got to interview her.
That was great.
Yeah.
That was great. She was a great guest.
Yeah.
And so it's great that Christine McCorkindale has shown up
and we may be interviewing her here in the near future.
Oh yeah. So stay tuned.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm still thinking about what to ask. Of course, it's going to be questions about the film because
and we can talk about what she's been up to. She's in. She works for Harvard Business School in I think in like IT.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's another exciting bit of news.
Yeah.
And we will be interviewing also Russell Charrington again, restoration director of the Cabal Cut, as well as Steve Dillon from Oz Horror Fest.
Yeah. So that we can talk about the Australian convention when they're trying to raise money. I think they're like halfway there, right? To bring the Cabal Cut to Australia.
Is there a Kickstarter or something that we can plug?
Yeah, it's a Kickstarter like thing, but it's a different company. But yeah, it's that kind of a thing.
They're halfway there, like you said, but they still need some more pledges. I think the website to support this convention is www.pozible.com. That is pozible.com/project/17269. So I think they're right now they're at 1,656 Australian dollars pledged of the 3,500 target.
Okay.
So that's pretty much.
So if you're in Australia and you're listening to this podcast, there's no reason that you shouldn't be setting that up.
Or if you want to support, for our antipodal friends on the other side of the world, if you want to help the Cabal Cut make it to Australia, just go there and pledge.
Yeah. So then the next thing, I think Clive Barker had put a kind of a long narrative about where he's at in Aberrat 4. And basically what he said was that the basic structure of the story is done, so the first draft is done. So now he's going to be meticulously going over the first draft, he says, word by word, taking out redundancies and working on a second draft.
All right. That's great news. That's wonderful news.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then on the realclivebarker.com, their web store, they have put up pictures of original art that you can buy. It used to be that you would say, it said, like, click here to request a catalog. But now they've actually put the original paintings and drawings up on the site, and they sort of range from, like, $600 up to like $10,000.
As in on the art section?
Yes, on the art section.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so that was pretty cool. I was just flipping through those here before we started recording.
So I wonder if so you're basically buying it straight from Clive, not going through any kind of gallery or middleman.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool. He's got a good treasure trove of stuff there.
Yeah, so he is the trove.
Yeah, they could be selling paintings for a long, long time.
I mean, he is the treasure, so yeah. Basically, that's great. I mean, it's great that the store is up because I think I mentioned this before. Like, for example, you got the Stealth Press Books of Blood, which on eBay can go up to $200 or something.
Yeah.
Signed by Clive.
That's the only place you're going to find them except for used from, previous owners.
Yeah, and on eBay, they're asking like $200 or more, $250 for the signed Stealth Press Books of Blood. And you can get it straight from Clive, signed, for like, I don't know, $80 or something. Yeah,
so that's a no-brainer.
Yeah, of course.
And plus, getting it, you would get it personalized instead of autographed to some other guy that, got it at a book signing sometime. Yeah,
that's actually a question that I would like to ask someone about, which is, it says you can get the books regular or signed, but it doesn't say if you can get them personalized. That would be interesting if you could actually get...
it'd be kind of nice to do a test case on that and see, like, what... because I wonder when you punch in on the store that you want it autographed, does it ask you to type in what you'd like it to say?
I don't think so, but I haven't gone that far yet. So, but that would be great. I mean, I wonder if the books are already just signed by Clive, or if he actually is going to sign them and write a dedication on it if you ask for it. But I didn't see any place where you can ask for dedication, so I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. We'll ask Alex and see what he says about that, how that works. We'd love to help them out and advertise for them. So the more we know, the better. The next thing. This isn't really news, but I've caught up to Hellraiser: The Dark Watch now. I went out to the comic shop and I bought number 2 and 3. So I've read all the way up through number 3.
So how do you like it so far?
I like it. It's a lot of kind of events and setting and trying to figure out what's going on. So there's not really like a bad guy yet.
Okay.
Because even like Pinhead is, like we said before, Pinhead is Harry D'Amour, and Tiffany has run into Harry D'Amour Pinhead, and it's just a lot of like setting up for something bad to happen later down the road, maybe.
Okay, well, we should probably put a spoilers notice on that.
Yeah.
Just in case someone is listening to it and going like, oh, shucks, they're just spoiling for me.
I didn't really spoil anything. I mean, you hear that from the very first issue.
Anyway, I still have... I'm sorry, I'm a little... my throat's a little hoarse today. But I still have to get some parts that are missing. My comic shop only had like 2 issues, and they're not consecutive ones.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I still have to get the rest of it. But it's looking good so far. I just looked at it. I haven't really read it so far because I want to get all the issues before I start reading from number 1.
Yeah.
And as I don't have number 1 yet, I'm just holding on until I get it.
And there's also a in that Hellraiser series, there's a Hellraiser annual that doesn't have a consecutive number, and it's got like Pinhead runs into Frank. So that's an interesting story. And then
you mean after the events of the Hellraiser 1 movie?
Right. Yeah. It fits within the timeline of this new series, this new Hellraiser series. But I think it comes along at like it's maybe around number 12 or something like that.
Because I'm not getting what happened to Frank after the film. I guess he went back to hell, or did he die? Or
I don't know. So. I think that's what it is.
Frank in the comics. Do you know what happens to Frank in the comics?
Well, he's just in that one issue, but Pinhead is not Pinhead anymore. He's Elliot Spencer, and he goes to talk to Frank and try to recruit him for something, and Frank recognizes him because like, you think I wouldn't know you even though you don't have the pins and stuff.
Oh, okay.
That's the most I remember about it right now, but yeah, so that was kind of cool to see him, coming back.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's great that they go back to these characters like Frank and stuff. I would like to know more about Kircher and
Oh yeah, right. And they name the in the Dark Watch they name the skeletal dragons. They call them, what is it, Erebors or something like that.
Ooh, kind of reminds me of the name Dementor from Harry Potter.
Yeah.
So we also have like the Hellraiser podcast. I'm sorry. Okay, so we also have now a YouTube channel. Barkercast. It's called Barkercast. I think you can go. We will post a link to it soon. We will use this channel to post video hangouts that we do or other videos that we might post.
I had that a little down farther on the list. But basically, we're trying to expand the podcast so that you can get it in other places besides just iTunes. So I've also submitted it to Podomatic, Stitcher, Double Twist, BlackBerry, Microsoft, Xbox, Zune, whatever they're calling that channel now. TuneIn Radio and Pocket Cast, and then now we're starting the YouTube channel, and I expect, over the next few months to be, gradually getting all of our catalog of episodes up on the YouTube channel as well. Yeah. So watch out for that. We will put up the MP3s with a little Clive Barker podcast image folder, and we will start uploading those things over there. Yeah. And it's going to be great. So stay tuned for that. Yeah, there's a lot of YouTube people, so I thought that might be a good way to spread the word. A lot of people, going to YouTube a lot.
The Barkercast is spreading.
Yeah. Speaking of that, the other thing, we have a new contributor, Crystal Rain. You probably recognize her. She's joined us on a few episodes, and she's done the Occupy Midian update or the Occupy Midian report. So she's joined us as a contributor, and she's done one story already. Because we kind of teased her a little bit when we were talking to the Hellraiser podcast people because she'd never seen Hellraiser. So she watched Hellraiser and did her, and wrote a feature kind of as what it's like to watch Hellraiser for the first time.
Right, because I think that her husband Richie is the longtime Hellraiser Clive Barker fan.
Yeah, so, and he got her into it, and she went to see the Cabal cut at the first Cabal cut at Mad Monster Party in North Carolina, and they were actually sitting right behind me, and I didn't know them at the time. But so that was really cool. And also we're looking for other contributors. So if you're interested, send us something and we'll read it over and see if we'd like you to be a regular contributor on our podcast. I mean, sure. on the blog page, writing features and reviews and news and stuff like that.
Yeah, and stay tuned because we'll probably start making other stuff like commentary tracks or something like that. So keep tuned. Stay tuned for that because we are spreading the formats and spreading into other places. So leave us reviews whenever you have the time. Yeah. Leave us a review on iTunes and leave us a review on other places that you find us.
We really appreciate that, and that helps boost our numbers and also creates more Clive Barker fans maybe.
Oh yeah, and we got an email too. We got a Gmail now. It's barkercast@gmail.com.
Yeah.
So use that. Send us whatever you want. Images, suggestions. Please feel free to send us stuff.
Yeah. Oh, and one other thing. So the Portland screening that's coming up in about a week at the H.P. Lovecraft Film Festival at the Hollywood Theater in Portland on 5/2 and May 2nd and May 3rd. After the May 2nd screening, which is at 2 o'clock on Saturday, May 2nd, I'm having a pizza party. So it's kind of for all Occupy Midian members and for our listeners who want to join us. It's at Atomic Pizza, which is right next door to the theater. So just please let us know if you're coming, because I need to know how much pizza I'm buying. But yeah, so we're going to talk about the movie. I'm going to record it with my little field recorder, and it's going to be an episode of the podcast. So,
wonderful.
Yeah, so join us then. Let us know through Facebook or email or Twitter or whatever if you want to come, and we'll save you a slice of pizza.
Yeah, I'll probably be there as a virtual presence though.
Yeah.
I can't really make it to Portland right now. It's a complicated time. Mm-hmm. Just moved into the U.S., waiting on paperwork and stuff we need to do. And so I really can't afford to go to Portland right now, but I will try to be there on Ryan's iPad or something.
Yeah. All right, yeah. So what's coming up is the episode 40 of the Clive Barker podcast. This was Hellraiser IV. So we originally recorded this all as one big, long 3-hour episode where we were talking about Hellraiser 3 and 4. But because it was 3 hours long, we split it into 2 episodes. So this was you and I, and Jonathan Kui, Max Lichtor, Mark Buckle, and Mark Buckle. So all talking about Hellraiser 4, Hellraiser Bloodline. We're kind of segueing here into Bloodlines.
Yeah.
Anyway, so should we start talking about that?
Sure. And Max, you have a bust that was made by Gary J. Tunnicliffe of Angelique, right?
It's not. It was titled Tiffany, the Bleeding Princess. But it may have been a prototype, or it may have just been like something he was working on alongside with it. But you could pull that from my Facebook, or I can send it to you for the page if people are interested in seeing it.
Right. I was mixing it up. Yeah, that's Tiffany, the one with the metal things on her head and stuff.
Yeah, a big plate that's going through her forehead, down through her chin and everything. So her eyes is covered with the plate. It's difficult to explain.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and Bloodline was a very convoluted movie. It was a very convoluted production process. Ended up becoming an Alan Smithy film. And,
there's something about that I wanted to bring up, too, because watching this again the other day, it occurred to me, are they breaking some kind of a rule if they just save the Alan Smithy for the end credits? Why do they have to put it in big letters right in the opening credits when everybody knows what that means?
Well, because usually they put the director's name in the opening of the film.
I know that it's a tradition, but they don't have to do it, right? I mean,
when this came out, I was unaware of the whole Alan Smithy thing myself.
Well, that's true. I didn't know either back then, but
you'd go on IMDb and say, "Hey, this Alan Smithy did a lot of films."
Actually, it would be kind of cool to look and see what all the movies were that no one wanted to put their name on.
Make a box set.
Yeah.
The Alan Smithy collection. Now on Blu-ray.
With no audio commentary.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it was a really convoluted process. I think, honestly, the only reason this was a moment where Hellraiser franchise almost came to an end.
Well, in a way it did.
Yeah.
Well, sure, yeah.
As far as going to the theaters.
Yeah, stopped going to the theaters. They stopped having a continuing story.
That was the last film that ever made it to the silver screen, with exception of Hellraiser Revelations, which actually did have like a very limited theater screening. I think it was limited to one theater.
Yeah, that was contractual.
Yeah, I think it was limited to one theater, actually, so,
wow.
Yeah.
Over here in Australia, there's a small place called Luna Cinemas, and they they'll show all of the Hellraisers over a weekend, and you go buy your ticket and just stay there as long as you can before you fall asleep or need to go and eat or something. But so they actually played Bloodline in their cinema, and I was able to go watch that, so that was really good.
Well, Peter Atkins said that the original premise for this film was to do 3 stories. Clive came up with that premise. And he said that that's what they brought to the table for Miramax when they started having meetings for pre-production in early '94. And he wanted to do 3 time periods, follow the fortunes of a family through 3 different time periods. He wanted to start in Victorian London, and it was going to be, of course, he wrote in his original novella that the box had been invented by the Parisian guy called Philippe Lemarchand. So, and then Peter Atkins came up with a thing. He said, why don't we, if we're going to do a family through the ages, why don't we start with the Lemarchand family? And rather than start in Victorian London, let's start in pre-revolutionary France. So that's how this whole thing got started. And, there's a lot of articles and things on Fangorias and Cine Fantastique and stuff like that I've clipped over the years. And, so this was the idea that Miramax greenlighted, and that's when Barker started collaborating with Atkins regarding the plot. They went through 5 or 6 drafts. The most widely known that you can find on the internet is the 5th draft of May '94. Did you know that at one point Guillermo del Toro was seriously considered to direct this film?
Yeah.
Wow.
That would have been great.
Yeah.
Well, it might have been great. It just depends on how much studio interference there was. And I mean, he's had pretty good luck with his movies, I think, but...
Then another guy who was almost signed in was Stuart Gordon, the guy who made the... From Beyond. He was all... Yeah. But his vision for the film clashed a bit with the producers, and they replaced him with Kevin Yeager, the guy who was doing the TV show for the Tales from the Crypt.
Oh.
Yeah.
Actually, now, and when you mention that, it does look like a Tales from the Crypt movie. I mean, because everything, it's like nothing's ever outdoors, everything's inside. It all kind of looks like you're inside of a TV studio.
Yeah, that was good. That was supposed to be Kevin Yeager's first feature film.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a bad experience for him. He was supposed to start filming this film called Scarecrow, but then he didn't, and he ended up coming into this Bloodline thing, and he started giving input to Peter Atkins, which affected the 4th draft of the script, and then eventually they started doing the shooting, which started in August '94, and it was 6 weeks.
But didn't they keep on going back and reshooting things?
Yes, then they did reshoots. This was shot in a converted A1 Globe pasta factory in Culver City, California, actually. And I think they went through a few directors of photography for this film.
The whole movie was shot in that pasta factory, or just part of it?
I don't know. They eventually had to move into studios, I guess.
Wow.
Jerry Lively was supposed to be the director of photography. He worked for a while, but after a few weeks into the shoot... no, I'm sorry. The original director of photography was not Jerry Lively. Jerry Lively was the first replacement for that. And then, of course, Kevin Yeager ended up describing the whole process as a one big, exhausting shoot. At the time, Clive Barker was doing The Lord of Illusions, and he would stop by he was just a few blocks down from the shooting set, and he stopped by at least once a week to give Yeager some support.
And this was a story that Clive had worked out with Peter Atkins, right?
Yeah. The budget, the original budget for this was ridiculously low. It was supposed to be $4 million, which was the same amount they spent on Hellraiser 3. But, then, of course, they found out that it was too ambitious a script. to be shot in 4 million. Because, of course, they had the whole past segment, and they had future, they had special effects, and they had to make up for that. So eventually they started...
Could I just convey a quick story? Sorry. On this point, there was a Hellraiser reunion, not the most recent one at Monster Mania, but a previous one, and Peter Adkins was there. He related a story that I'll never forget about Bloodline. He said that at one point when they were trying to contract who would be doing the special effects, they realized that they were running really low on money, and apparently he had a conversation with, he must know one of the line producers, and he asked them, well, who are you getting to do like the space effects, like Industrial Light and Magic? And she said, well, yeah. And of course that blew like a huge portion of their already minuscule budget, and so that was a big crippling thing. Like the fact that they went with ILM, from what he said, basically they didn't really need to go with such an expensive company, but I guess whichever line producer subcontracted ILM to do the effects didn't realize that was a ridiculously expensive way to go, and that was a huge hit to the budget.
Wow, I remember after it was just after Hellraiser 3 had come out, and I was at a signing for The Thief of Always, and Clive Barker did a reading where he read the first chapter of The Thief of Always, and then he did a question and answer thing, and one guy said, what was the deal with Hellraiser 3? And he said, well, there shouldn't be 3 movies of anything. He said, take a look at Alien 3. That wasn't very good, and what did they do in Return of the Jedi? They just brought the Death Star back again. And he said, but we're trying something new and different with Hellraiser 4, so it's ambitious. I think it is, and that was kind of all he said about it. I
actually disagree with him on that whole Alien 3 one. I think it's one of my favorites. But
I do too. Yeah, I was kind of like, hey. Oh, and he also, during that interview, he also made fun of Home Alone and Macaulay Culkin.
Yeah, I'm with him on that one, though.
Yeah.
So another thing was that of course, they started shooting the 18th century period parts, and that took 2 weeks. And then they started going for the future segment of the Minos space station, and then things started going wrong. They had a fire at the building that had the sprinklers activating, flooding the sets. They lost the DP. They had to replace him. Even one of the child actors, who I think was supposed to play the little kid,
the one
little
that
merchant,
kidnapped.
Jack
yeah,
Merchant.
He got chickenpox, so they had to replace him. Yeah, and so everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong, and
that kind of explains why Jack had such a tiny part in the movie. I mean, he barely speaks.
Yeah. After another week, they had finished shooting the future segment. And by then, Doug Bradley had gotten his 65th application of the Pinhead makeup.
Oh.
And because, I don't know if you guys know this, but I'm sure Mark probably knows this, 65-year-old British citizens usually get a free bus pass when they celebrate their 65th birthday, and like a telegram from the Queen. So or from the Queen's office. So Gary Tunnicliffe gave Doug Bradley a free bus pass from Leviathan City Limits public transportation, which allowed him the bus to hell. Yeah, wow. I really did my homework for this one, guys. So,
I was wondering the building that the merchant building, is it supposed to be the same place that Joey puts the cube into the concrete at the end of 3?
That is left kind of unclear, isn't it? I mean, we do get that impression.
Yeah, that's what I always assumed. And she punches that concrete pillar in the basement and pulls the cube out of it.
Yeah, even though Joey put the box in a plate, not a pillar.
Right.
So, but yeah, I guess, that's one of those things that from one movie to the other, they kind of change things. Like the pillar on Hellraiser 2 becoming different.
Yeah.
Right. Hellraiser 3, I guess, I would say, in my opinion, that it's the same building.
Yeah, I think so too.
That brings another question, which is, it was supposed to be looking like, the Hellraiser box because it was built by Le Marchand, the merchant.
Yeah.
And the influence was from the Bloodline. And what we got the impression at the end of Hellraiser 3 is that what influenced the design of the building was the fact the box was in the foundations.
Yeah.
I just think they kind of made a good, marriage of both.
Yeah, it's kind of an evolution of what happened at the end with what they wanted to narrate for the 4th one.
Yeah.
And the building that they actually used in Part 3 is a real-life building site. So there was a building. I can't remember the name of the building now. I think it was out the back of a campus or something like that. And, they actually did build a building on that concrete pad later on. So it'd be good to see if it had any influence.
It's a bank. It's a bank in North Carolina. At the end of Hellraiser 3, you see this little girl looking at this sculpture.
Right.
Which has this kind of boxes in it. It's got this. That sculpture is real. It exists in front of this bank in North Carolina.
I loved all the alternate panel designs that were inside the building.
Yeah, that's a matte painting.
Yeah.
Have anyone read the Nicholas Vince story in Hellbound Hearts?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That instantly made me think of the building in Hellraiser IV.
Yeah.
When I was reading about his demon's design.
Yeah, I think it was. I think it would probably. They could have done better in the movie if they'd had a bigger budget. It would have been probably more like what was in Nicholas Vince's story. More moving parts and things, things happening instead of just like...
Yeah, more like a maze-like thing.
Yeah.
Like a maze construction.
Instead of plates with like little clockwork gears and stuff in them.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then the shooting schedule ended up closing on September 94. Then in October 95, Fangoria magazine continued covering this convoluted production. And by that time, Miramax had changed the date of release from January 96 to March 96. And, because they weren't happy with the film, they wanted to do another week of reshoots, which ended up not being a week at all. But after 6 weeks of shooting, the money hadn't been enough to complete it. I think Kevin Yeager ended up making a few cuts of the movie to show the producers. They were still missing a lot of special effects. They were still pretty rough, and there were parts that I think he went through several iterations. He went from iterations that were really long, and then he started cutting things out, and then but the more you cut on an incomplete movie, the more incomplete it becomes. So that's why they said, let's do some more weeks of reshoots. So I think they added another couple of million or something to it, which, started making the movie more expensive. And that's when with the reshoots, that's when Kevin Yeager stepped out and Joe Chappelle stepped in. And I think the writer who came in to work on Peter Atkins' script, they brought in this guy called Randy Ravitch to write a few extra scenes. Anyway, the production process was getting pretty lengthy. At one point, they even considered starting the movie over again, which would have been really even more expensive.
That's crazy.
I know. So Kevin Yeager, walked away from the film, and he said there was no firing; it was a mutual agreement. And then he wanted to do other stuff, and he was upset about the changes in the film, of course, and so he left. And so basically, Miramax wanted the picture out in January '95 at this point, and they were already getting into June and July. So they never had the time to do the film properly. They just finished it because they really wanted to go ahead and make Hellraiser 5 eventually in 6.
And get and maybe recoup some of the money they lost.
Yeah. Kevin Yeager went on to say in an interview that to do it really well, the movie, we needed $6 million, but deep down it was probably a $12 million movie. So there was cut corners everywhere. They ended up cutting a lot of effects shots. I mean, if you go around and you look at behind the scenes photos that are floating around the internet, you will find stuff like shots that were never made, parts of the script that were cut, like Angelique's clowns in the 18th century would stop Augustine, who was the friend from Le Marchand, the friend with a beard and the glasses that was doing an autopsy at one point.
Oh, yeah.
He was supposed to be in a scene where he would meet these clown Cenobites and his face would be turned into a drum. And there is actually a picture of that face on a drum. But that scene would become too expensive, so they never really shot it.
Weren't a lot of those pictures first put up in Fangoria magazine? I think I remember that during the time I was anticipating the movie, and a number of the gambler scene and also the drum I think were in Fangoria at some point. previous to the movie's release.
And Jacques' death was supposed to be different. Jacques' death was supposed to be he was supposed to age. He was supposed to age really a long time in just a short amount of time. And they would have these different busts where they would like cut between the busts and show his face getting all wrinkled.
Yeah,
and
instead of her just slashing his face all up and then...
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because that was supposed to show us that it's been, for almost 200 years and he still hasn't aged a day. And eventually it was just supernatural, spells keeping him young, I guess. Hell, Angelique was keeping him young, and then she would just snap her fingers and he would just become this old man, just like it happened in Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
And, yeah. So, yeah, eventually they did that. They decided to do 2 weeks of additional shooting, and Kevin Yeager did the final work print, put some cards where the shots were missing, gave it to the producers and said, okay, you guys go ahead and do whatever you want to do. I'm walking away. And so a lot of the kills were missing, a lot of the effect shots were missing, and he wanted Pinhead to show up later in the film. He thought that they should start chronologically from the past segment, then the present, and then the future, and Pinhead would show up pretty much, just in the present segment, I guess. But of course, they wanted Pinhead to begin right at the beginning, so that's why we start off in the future segment. We see Pinhead show up, then we go into flashback to the past, and then the present, and then we go back to the future, where we see again what opens the movie as another flashback from the future. It's just very confusing.
Yeah, and he's like, I don't have time to explain to you the whole history of my family in hell, but here's the story anyway.
Yeah. Kevin Yeager did 4 cuts that varied in length, between 110 to 82 minutes. So that's what he said. He said when Kevin Yeager walked away, he said, this ended up being a battle, becoming a constant battle between the art and the money. Yeah, and Rand Ravitch was a writer who had worked at Candyman 2, and director Joe Chappelle, he had worked in Halloween 6, or should I say he had managed to destroy Halloween 6 as well. And they had another director of photography, which was the third one, called Tony Palmieri, and they did 2 weeks of reshoots. And, yeah.
And in an interview, Doug Bradley has said that if they had just gotten that amount of money from the start, it would have been a much better movie, but to keep on filming the movie and then adding things by reshoots and gathering everybody up and coming back and starting over again, it cost a lot more money than it would have if they just, done it right from the beginning.
Right, yeah. They did these 2 weeks of reshoots in May 95, and that's when Joe Chappelle decided to put the future in the beginning of the film, and then, they changed the ending completely, giving Miramax the happy ending they wanted. When, you see Le Marchand going to Earth with the girl, and it's like, oh, happy ending. Because the original ending was very different. The original ending was, spoilers, I don't want to spoil it for anybody who doesn't know this, but the original ending of the script was supposed to be a face-off between Merchant and Pinhead at the space station, and then the space station explodes with both of them on board, and you see this pin floating in space afterwards. So that was basically what the ending was supposed to be. And there was another ending also, which involved a giant hand showing up in space in another draft of the script. A giant hand would come up from space while the Minos station is turning into a box and becoming this light configuration, the Elysium configuration. A giant hand would come up from space, pick it up, and then it would morph into a hand putting it on top of a table. And it would be Le Marchand in the 18th century finishing the box and saying, oh, it's done, it's done.
Oh, so, yeah.
I really like that the space station is called the Minos as well, because in ancient times the King Minos ordered Daedalus to construct a palace to hide the Minotaur, which was the labyrinth. So,
oh, yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Wow.
I like little things that tie in together with maybe Hellbound and.
And actually that's it's interesting that we never ever see hell again, right? In any Hellraiser movie.
Like you were saying earlier about Hell on Earth, I was under the same impression that like maybe Hell on Earth would mean there would be a giant Leviathan in New York City or something like that, and a lot more apocalypse in there. So.
Yeah.
Right.
That would have been great. I guess the closest thing that we come to revisiting Hellraiser 1 and 2 when the Cenobites appear would be, I think, in Deader, because when Amy Klein walks down into the house where the Deaders are all living together, it starts becoming this huge labyrinth of a basement, and it's all brick walls, and then when the Cenobites come, they come by lightnings and light, like the first movie. So, yeah, I think that was close.
What about the discrepancy between the hell that we see in the present segment of Bloodline when Angelique and that guy in the basement solve the box, and then the wall splits open, you see Chatterbeast kind of walking around in the background, and there's screaming and bright lights, and then out walks Pinhead right after, that guy gets the chain in the neck. There's a big discrepancy there between the vision of hell that we've seen in Hellbound and the glimpse that we see in the present, and I don't know that that's ever really addressed or resolved.
Well, are you talking about the part where the guy who Angelique has seduced is opening the box?
Yes. Yeah.
But we don't really see much of what's beyond the open doors. We just see like bright light,
which still is a huge contrast to what we saw in Hellbound and what we would come to expect. I mean, it didn't appear that there was a labyrinth back there.
Well, but
no.
But even in Hellraiser 1, there's light behind the Cenobites when the walls open and they're
walking. Oh, that's true. Okay, yeah, all right.
And in Hellbound, you see Pinhead walking through this corridor. All you can see behind him is light. So yeah, well, you raise a good point. But, yeah, but so. Doug Bradley also commented in the 90s about the post-production of Bloodline. And he says, and I quote, "It was horrible. Everything about it was dark and impenetrable. There was a number of fundamentally bad decisions made very early on, primarily to do with trying to shoot Bloodline for the same money and in the same time frame as Hell on Earth. But not only did they want it shot in L.A., which is expensive, instead of North Carolina, which isn't, it was clear that this was far and away the most complicated Hellraiser script, certainly more than Hell on Earth. And like Hellbound, it was obviously going to be effects heavy. So even before they started filming, Doug Bradley was having serious doubts whether the movie could be shot in the 36 days on the money they had been given. So the irony, of course, is that they ended up spending the extra time and extra money that they were refusing to commit in the first place.
Yeah.
And and so he said that the 2 weeks of reshoots, Doug Bradley said they really weren't reshoots at all. They were shooting whole new material, of course, we know. In the work print of Bloodline, and we will get to that in another episode of the podcast, there are different scenes in the future. There is even a scene where we see Merchant talking to a hologram of a priest, explaining to him what he's going to do, and he's going to fight hell, and he's going to fight demons, and he might not, survive. And you see the hologram priest going like, "I'll pray for you," and then it just flicks out. And it's a strange scene. That was one of the reshoots. That was rewritten. That was material that Randy Ravitch came up with. And there are other minor sections there, but especially this scene, because I think it's so out of place that inside the space station there is a holographic priest, and it's like, why, it just seems strange to me. And why is he talking to a holographic priest to begin with? But and we see a scene where he's shaving his head and all that. So there are some parts which are cool. Others are a little hard to understand. And another thing was, originally the Mino space station was supposed to be built on an asteroid. And this is apparent when you're watching the film. Because if you look behind the walls, you look at the walls behind what's going on, in most cases you see that it looks like they're made of stone.
Oh, yeah.
Did you notice that detail? So, and it was supposed, the Minos was supposed to be, in the early drafts of the script, it was supposed to be built on an asteroid, which was then towed out of orbit or something by Merchant.
Right.
And then they changed it to something that was completely built. That was just a complete construction, just like a man-made thing.
I guess they wanted to turn into the box. So the asteroid might have been
exactly
something in the way of that change.
Exactly. I think that's the whole point that they did. Yeah. So that's just why some people ask me why are the walls so weird, and it's like, well, because it was supposed to be rock.
Yeah.
It's supposed to, rock, yeah.
Some cool things about I love the Cenobite designs in this movie. I mean, they're not corny like in Hellraiser 3. I mean, we don't even know what happened to them. Maybe they, maybe when they all went back to hell, some Leviathan said, "You guys aren't really good enough to go back out again." But I like the Angelique design, and Pinhead is cool, and the Chatterbeast is really cool. The twin one I don't really care for that much, but
yeah, it's the weakest part.
Yeah, and especially when they kill that cop by like separating and then smooshing back on top of him.
Yeah.
Like what? Why didn't they just use a knife or something?
I know. I guess they were supposed to do a better effects shot, and that's just what they could come up with. Yeah. I don't know.
Anybody have an explanation for Pinhead with the hooks coming out of his fingers in that scene?
Oh yeah, that was strange, wasn't it?
Yeah,
just very bizarre and random.
Yeah,
super cool. Works really well for me. And then he just sticks one of those hooks into Angelique's breast, and you just see the blood come down, and she has this look on her face like she's enjoying it. That is such a great shot. I really love it.
One issue that, Jose, you and I have sort of debated this a little bit too, but one issue that I've always had is that we start out, well, in the past, we've got, what is that old guy's name that summons Angelique?
Duke Delil?
Yeah, Delil. Is sort of this, like, black magician, right? And so he's got a pentagram on the floor, and he summons a demon so that he can command it, and that's all sort of traditional Christian hell mythology. And and it seems like to me that Angelique is sort of a traditional Christian type demon.
Not necessarily Christian. Invocation of demons goes back to pagan times and Greeks and Roman gods and stuff. So not necessarily Christian, but I think I understand what you're trying to say.
I mean, I guess I'm seeing that there's this, and it everybody except Clive Barker always wants to take the hell from Hellraiser and merge it with other people's traditional idea of what hell is.
I know. It's supposed to mean that in the old days, this is what I took out of it. It was supposed to mean that in the old days, when there wasn't a box created by Le Marchand, that they would have to use different ways to cross the schism into that alternate dimension of hell. Mm-hmm. Some of it would be like summoning them, I guess, summoning the Cenobites, because that there were different ways of calling the Cenobites mentioned in the novella, like origami and other things that you could do.
Yeah.
So maybe that's just another form of invoking an entity from another dimension.
Yeah, it's just a more stereotypical.
Sure. Because you see open a pit downwards, like it's going downwards into hell, and so yeah.
And she possesses the skin of that woman that they killed.
Mm-hmm. What were you going to say, Johnny?
This is a bit of a tangent, but I thought Clive Barker was planning on merging the Cenobite mythology with Christian hell in the Scarlet Gospels, which has not yet come out.
He is. Lucifer and Jesus are going to be there. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, in the same way that Jesus is in the Great and Secret Show or Everville. I mean, it's not, or Imagica, right? Mm-hmm. It's his way of defining how the world works.
Yeah, but we are going to see hosts of fallen angels, and he actually mentions fallen angels and stuff. So I think he is trying to merge the two things.
And the Scarlet Gospels has gone through a lot of revision, so we don't really know what the final thing is going to look like either.
Yeah, but the whole thing about one of the questions that comes up a lot, and I noticed none of you have mentioned it yet, is in the theatrical version, we see that Delil summons Angelique, okay? Mm-hmm. And then he tells to Jacques, he who summons the magic commands the magic. And then the next thing we see is that Le Marchand goes to Chateau de Rêve, which is Delille's chateau. And he goes there and he finds that Jacques is in bed with Angelique and Delille has been horribly mutilated. And then, you see Jacques in the present with Angelique and, repeating that thing. He summons the magic, commands the magic. But Jacques did not summon Angelique. It was Delille.
Yeah.
So what's going on here? And the whole answer to that is that it's a matter of the rewrites, reshoots, and re-edits that they did. Because originally what happened was Delille controlled Angelique. Then Le Marchand would show up at the chateau. And there would be this fight, I think. And Angelique would be sent back to hell with the box. And then Jacques would summon her again because he would confront Le Marchand and beat him and get the box. And he would summon Angelique again. And that this time he would be the one in charge of Angelique. So that's why he would be in the present controlling Angelique. And that's just something that is lost when they started rewriting, reshooting, re-editing. So everybody's like, why is Delille killed when he says that he who summons the magic commands the magic?
Yeah.
And that's the explanation. Yeah.
And it's... Yeah, I mean, and in the work print, it went sort of a different direction, and it was sort of implied that for a long time Delille was still alive until at some point he screwed up and forgot to he stood in Hell's way, and then she killed him, and so Jacques was the only one left of those two. And so it's like Jacques didn't even. I mean, and it's implied, I think, in the theatrical version that Jacques sort of betrayed Delille like the first chance that he got.
Well, I think there was a scene in the work print, which is, well, actually, I'm sorry, I don't think this scene is in the work print. I haven't watched the work print in a while, but there is a scene, for example, in the trailer of Bloodline. Okay. I'm taking you guys to the trailer. We see at one point we see someone being thrown out of a window. It's just a brief shot. We hardly see it. There's another shot where we see these card players at a table, and we see a burning candelabra, and we see this black guy with his chain going around his neck. That was taken from things that were cut from the final film. That was supposed to be the gambler's card scene where Angelique is, hosting a card game and all that stuff. And okay, so the scene with the person being thrown out of a window, it's actually Delille being thrown out of a window by Angelique.
Yeah, she picks him up by his throat, I believe. There's a still photo of her strangling him or picking him up off the ground, at least. Exactly.
And this is all very confusing for anybody listening to this who has not seen the work print or read the previous drafts of the script. So, apologize for the confusion. I'm trying to make this as clear as possible, that the stories went through so many changes that some of this stuff got lost. And, yeah, so,
But if you're just watching the movie that came out, all you see is Delille is sitting on a chair and he's kind of messed up and there's like worms or something on him.
Yeah, worms everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looked like something out of that.
Did he have a knife sticking out of him, right?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, he had just been terribly mangled, which I assume by Jacques and Angelique.
Yeah.
Which doesn't make sense because, like I said, he summons the magic, commands the magic, and Delille summoned Angelique. So why would he be, killed by Angelique?
Well, and then why would Jacques get to keep controlling her?
Sure, because it's missing that scene that they took out of the script, which was a scuffle would ensue. Le Marchand would confront Delille. Delille, would also confront Angelique, and then she would throw him out of the window. Le Marchand would pick up the box, banish Angelique, and then Jacques would hit Le Marchand, I think, and he would bring back Angelique again with the box. And that's when he would start controlling Angelique. So, yeah.
It's such a shame because the trailer has such wonderful scenes that, even now I watched the trailer for Bloodline and I'm like, this is a Hellraiser film I would totally want to see. And I mean, it's just such a, welcome, Pinhead saying welcome to Oblivion. I mean, it's a great shot from that trailer and we never get to see it. It just, it's such a shame.
Yeah. Another thing I think, and any one of you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I've heard, I don't know if this is true, that some of those final lines were written by Clive Barker, like the Welcome to Oblivion, Amen scene was written by Clive Barker. I don't know.
Never heard that.
Yeah. So, but another thing, which is when we see in the final scene of the theatrical cut, Pinhead is all mangled up, the Minos is closing in on him, everything's exploding, and we hear this shot of Le Marchand whispering, "Welcome to Oblivion," and Pinhead says, "Amen," and everything explodes, and the Ewoks are happy, and Endor is saved. But I think that the whole thing, because at that time, of course, the Minos is not operational anymore. Everything is like exploding, and there is no way that he could have heard that coming from any monitor or anything, because Le Marchand is going back to Earth on his spaceship with Rimmer. Yeah. But that is kind of a remnant of the original scene, which was supposed to be Pinhead throws a chain at Le Marchand, who's actually still in the Minos, and he's facing him. He's saying, "This ends here. The game is going to end." And it's like, and Pinhead shoots a chain at Le Marchand, pulls him in until they're face to face, and Le Marchand says, "Welcome to Oblivion," and then the whole station explodes. So I think they like that line so much, they just wanted to keep it in, so they just put it there in the theatrical version.
And I think in all versions they play pretty loose with the rules that were sort of set up for the other, the first two Hellraiser movies, like those security guards that get turned, the twins.
Yeah.
Why do they get killed? What did they ever do? I mean, all they're doing is walking around and they see a door.
I guess they insulted Pinhead's sensitivity.
Yeah, right, because they said, "We're going to put some pain on you."
Counter Beast needed something that screams.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, it used to be that you had to know what you're getting into, that you bought, you bought the box, you set up the ritual, you sit down on the floor and apparently take your shirt off. And, and at least they have some sort of idea, at least, or obsession with it.
Their dialogue in the beginning. Go ahead.
Sorry?
Go ahead.
I always thought that in that scene that Pinhead was sort of showing off to Angelique a little bit, like that, "Look what I can do," sort of thing.
Oh yeah, definitely. He said it was a lesson to her that that if you either join me or
work with me or for me.
Yeah, that's right. Work with me or for me.
Also, a little bit of trivia that I learnt about only recently, that the two twins, I haven't checked it yet, but apparently their name badges both say Bradley, so...
Oh, really? I didn't notice that.
Yeah, and another bit of trivia. Once, God, I saw this horrible movie that, those two twins on Hellraiser Bloodline, of course there are the twins security guards, and then there are the twins with the makeup on. They're not the same people. The guys who played the twin Cenobites, they're actually two twins. And,
They actually commissioned two sets of twins for this movie.
They did, yes. And I saw a film. Those two twins that were under the makeup for the twin Cenobites, they're directors. They were a team. And they're Michael and Mark Polish. And these guys have made a film, which I saw once on a bus, right? It was terrible. What was it called? Twin Falls, Idaho. Twin Falls, Idaho is this movie about two Siamese twins that are joined together.
I have heard about this film.
Yeah, and eventually they go through this kind of surgery and they become separate. And it's a weird kind of movie. It's kind of an indie film. It's kind of I thought it was a little boring, but
is
the
it
premise
like
of
Basket Case?
No, not at all. They're just
sounds a little like a prequel, maybe. They got taken apart, and then later on, Pinhead had seen this movie and decided, "Well, I'm putting you back together again."
Yeah. They're Francis and Blake Falls are conjoined twins who live in a neat little room in the rundown hotel. While sharing some organs, Blake is always fit and Francis is very sickly. And then they meet a lady, and of course they fall in love, and she falls in love with one of them, and they have to be separated at one point, and then it's called Twin Falls, Idaho. It's from 1999. So those two twins under the makeup are a different set of twins, and they also made films. Wow. Michael and Mark Polish. So there you go.
Interesting.
Well, gentlemen, I hate to interrupt. I'm afraid I'm being called away, and I have to leave.
Oh.
So I just want to apologize for bouncing.
Yeah, no, this is going kind of long. I'm probably going to end up having to split this into 2 episodes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So thanks for joining us, Johnny.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for the insight. It's a pleasure joining all of you. Could I actually plug something really quickly? Feel free to cut it anyway. Since we're talking about Bloodline, and this is a project of mine from way back, but I know I mentioned it earlier. My fan film Hellraiser: Dead or Winter's Lament. Mm-hmm. The reason I'm mentioning it now is because in the story, I actually pick up with what Bobby and Jack Merchant do after the events in Bloodline, and how it ties together with Winter. From Hellraiser 7, and how he gets the box from Bobby. And so the whole, he who summons the magic commands the magic unless he stands in Hell's way.
Okay.
I use that as a tool to explain a lot of, what happens with Winter in Hellraiser 7. So anyway, fans of Hellraiser Bloodline might like seeing that. So
yeah. It's on YouTube. We'll add that one to the show notes.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Winter is Bobby Merchant's brother-in-law, right?
That in my little story, I said, because they had alluded to him as being part of the Bloodline, I said, well, it would make sense if he were, say, John Merchant's brother. So
yeah, absolutely. Cool. We'll add that one to the show notes.
All right. Well,
thank you, sir.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. It was a real pleasure, and I hope to join you guys again sometime soon.
Cool.
Awesome, right. Johnny.
All right, you guys have a good night. Continue, and sorry again to bow out early. Take care now.
Thanks.
No problem.
You too.
Have a good day, Jonathan.
So yeah, I mean, the whole thing about Bloodline is that it was supposed to be, again, a different film than what we got, and we'll discuss the work print later on in another episode.
Well, so go ahead.
I guess another thing that kind of bugs me is that this whole subplot of Pinhead kidnapping the son to try to draw out John Merchant and make him do what he wanted. It seems unnecessarily complicated and devious for Pinhead, who's usually pretty straightforward.
I guess the premise is that he wanted to attract, Merchant. So he was using it as bait. I could see it working as a way to draw his attention. To get him to come out of Angelique's thrall, so to speak.
Yeah.
Because it's like he's becoming really involved with Angelique. She's kind of like seducing him, just like Pinhead kind of seduces other people using his magnanimous speeches, of course. And in Angelique's case, she's using her charms as a way to. Basically, the thing is that it doesn't come off as clearly as it should in the theatrical version. What Angelique wanted to do is have him build the Elysium configuration so she could destroy Pinhead.
Yeah, you get a little hint of that, but it's not really clear. It almost because it almost feels like I'm not sure if it's that or if she just doesn't understand what it does and she thinks
no.
It's
and then in the film, they kind of redub some scenes and all that. They recut some scenes where Pinhead and Angelique and Little Jack and Merchant are facing off in the building. Mm-hmm. And then you have this scene where she says, "Open the pathway for me," and all that stuff. And then she says, "The toy maker's design." And basically, when they dub that scene, "Open the gateway for me," or "the pathway for me," they're trying to make us think that she wants to be the one that controls the pathway, but it doesn't really make any sense because both Pinhead and Angelique want the pathway to hell to be opened by that building. They want the doorway to hell that's huge and where they can just, invade Earth, so to speak. So basically, Pinhead and Angelique both want the doorway to open. But Angelique's agenda in the work print is just that she wants the Elysium configuration, the one with the light endless light, to destroy Pinhead. That's what she's trying to force Merchant into doing. She doesn't really care about opening the pathway or whatever. Yeah. So it just becomes a little confusing in the theatrical version, I think.
Speaking of the work print version, a little while ago we were having a Halloween get-together, and I've got a lot of friends that are into Hellraiser and things like that, but I didn't have a lot of time to make a costume or anything. So I ended up having a T-shirt printed up, and you guys will probably understand this joke, but the T-shirt just said lumps on back. And I said, well, I'm Angelique. From
That's cool.
Yeah. How many of your friends got it?
2 out of maybe 30.
That's not bad.
Yeah.
That's not bad at all.
Wow.
So, yeah. It was supposed to be, and then of course there's the whole thing about when Angelique looks at Pinhead and she's kind of surprised and she says, "Things seem to have changed," and then he says, "Well, hell is much less amusing since you were there and much more ordered."
Yeah,
and he's referring to the fact that in the original script, it was supposed to be like when Angelique shows up in the past segment, she had these clown Cenobites and these things like Harlequin and. Like these Harlequin and what's the name of the other one? I forget that. The ones that use those dominoes, Pierrot and there's a scene where they kill Le Marchand's friend. Of course, that these guys are like they show up and they're like clown Cenobites, and they're setting up this little play, this little dance, and they're juggling stuff, and they open up this little mini theater with curtains, and they open up and it's a giant maw of hell. And so, yeah, I guess they were supposed to show that the hell was different according to who was kind of ruling it at the time or something, or that there were different orders that took over hell over time. And in Angelique's time, it was more amusing, more like a dark carnival thing. And in Pinhead's time, it's a more military, more discipline-based kind of thing. So I don't know if you guys got that thing out of the movie, but that's what I got.
Yeah. I also really enjoyed the design of the Angelique Cenobite. I thought that was probably one of the better Cenobites throughout the whole movies.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
And I heard that it was supposed to represent a nun's cowl on the top of her head.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was created by Gary J. Tunnicliffe. He came up with that. So, yeah, it's one of those movies that's deeply flawed. But at the same time, if you're not too knowledgeable about the film, I guess it's kind of like, it's an okay film. The last Hellraiser that was ever on the big screen, I guess.
Yeah. And actually, one thing that kind of bugged me, another nitpicky thing is when that guy's got when Pinhead's walking up to that guy and he's like freaking out because his gun won't work, or he's shooting the Pinhead and it won't hurt him. Yeah. So then later on, it's like Pinhead's got some sort of a magical shield around him because he's from hell, but the Chatterbeast can get decompressed in an airlock.
Yeah, I guess they're just trying to show that it's a minor pet. It's not powerful or anything. It's just
maybe
it's just a creature, like an inferior creature. I think it was funny because it's a movie that bridges. Well, in Hellraiser 3, we don't have any kind of Chatter Cenobites, but then Hellraiser 4 has the Chatterbeast. Hellraiser 5 has like Torso, and then after that, there was always some kind of Chatter Cenobite in the Hellraiser films.
Yeah,
I like that they kept the design of the chattering teeth.
Yeah.
In the Hellraiser films.
Yeah, and then the other thing that kind of bugged me is I think people have talked about this before, but just the fact that Pinhead can carry on a conversation with someone who he thinks is there, but it turns out they're just a hologram. And he's like, what?
Yeah. Yeah, and, that's one of those little things where you have to suspend your disbelief for a while, because it's just meant to, push the story forward and push it towards the ending that the writer wanted to write.
Yeah. Well, and if Merchant really could sit there and have a conversation With Pinhead, he would have been killed.
Yeah. That's the whole point.
Yeah. And Pinhead thinks, oh, well, I've got you right here in the room with me. I can talk to you for a while because you're not going anywhere. You know, you're stuck. I've got you. And it turns out, nope, he's gone. You know, you're just talking to a hologram. And Pinhead's like, well, we don't have these in hell, so I don't know about holograms.
Right. So, anybody wants to add anything else about Bloodline?
Oh yeah, just there's a lot of great symbolism in that movie. That most of it's quite quick, like when he grabs at the earth and suddenly he's got hooks coming out of the end of the fingers. And
yeah.
I particularly like the scene where he throws the white dove to the Shadow Beast.
Yeah, that's cool.
Do we have any listener feedback?
Yes. Yep. Actually,
about this, we do, right?
From the website. Actually, this one isn't really about Hellraiser 3 and 4, but he says, I look forward to any and all works of macabre god Clive Barker. And this is Sean Moore. I especially have been waiting patiently all these long years for the Clive Barker directed and written Tortured Souls movie. Any thoughts on the subject? My thought is, please don't wait for that, because it's not going to happen.
Yeah, we'll never see it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that who knows? I mean, it would be nice if the script came out so that we could read it. Because I can't imagine how you could adapt that story that came with the Tortured Souls into a movie. I would really want to read that and see how they did it.
Yeah, it was supposed to be the Legend of Primordium.
Yeah.
Well, you can read the story, so...
yeah, but I mean, the movie wouldn't be like that.
You can make the movie in your head about the story, I guess. Of course, they would probably, change a lot of things, because I remember reading the premise of the script. It was supposed to be more about this woman and who would become Lucidique. I don't know. I mean, probably you're better off making the movie in your head while you read the actual story that came with the Tortured Souls.
Yeah.
Was it always supposed to be animated, or was it going to be live action, or what was the?
I think it started as live action, and then animated was another idea that was thrown out there.
Mm-hmm. I really like the story, so it's too bad that it never went beyond that. But I appreciate the stories and the figures; so they're great.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's probably not good for you to hold out hope for that, to Sean Moore.
Those things usually are protected by non-disclosure agreements or option deals or something, and then of course they end up being put in some kind of drawer. And it's like the pilots. I mean, I was just listening to an interview the other day with George R. Martin, where he was complaining about the time he was in Hollywood and he was writing these pilots for TV. And he was complaining that, well, the whole thing is that they bring you a truckload of money so you can develop something. And then you spend like a year working on this project. You come up with these characters and all these backstories for the characters, and you write the pilot, you shoot the pilot, you give it to them, and then they go like, yeah, we're not going to do this. And they just put it in a drawer, and nobody's ever going to see that again.
Yeah.
So he thought that was kind of a frustrating thing to do.
Yeah, and, they like buying ideas.
And then he says, and you can't really do anything about it or release it or go to someone else, because they did give you a truckload of money to write that stuff, so now it's theirs.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Has anybody heard anything further on the Hellraiser TV series?
Well,
not really. No.
We talked a little bit about that when that announcement came out, and kind of our thinking is that really it's the rights holder was putting that announcement out there just to try to get people interested in helping them make the TV series. And we kind of don't really think that there's anything to it, or that they have the means to actually make something.
I think this is still from the time of Hellraiser 3, when there was this guy who got the rights for the TV adaptation of Hellraiser. I forget his name. I forgot his name. Well, if I remember, I'll add the name. But it's not the first time that rumors about a Hellraiser TV show have come out. I mean, they've been trying to do this ever since '92. And at least I've heard about a TV show coming real soon, like 2 or 3 times now over the years.
Then a few talks about musicals as well.
Really?
You haven't heard that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
There's been like 2 separate occasions where they were thinking about bringing it to Broadway, I guess. So
wow.
Seems I'm not sure how that would turn out, but you get the right people on the job, maybe.
And I remember, I think in an interview one time, Clive Barker had said, somebody asked him, why do you keep, producing these Hellraiser sequels? And he said, well, if I don't keep involved in it, then how do I keep tabs on what they're doing with these characters that I came up with? So they could make a rap group out of the Cenobites.
Oh, I just remembered. The owner, the producer who owns this since '92, the rights to make a TV adaptation of Hellraiser, is called Larry Kupin, with a K, Kupin. So he was trying to partner with Sonar Entertainment to make Hellraiser the series, and that Sonar press release came out in April of last year, so it's been like a year since that thing came out.
Yeah.
And nothing really has transpired about any developments in that thing. The Sonar press release said that well, I remember, do you guys remember when at one point in the late 90s or early 2000s it was supposed to be about this computer tycoon or something, and there would be like Pinhead would be working with them to create like this virtual lament configuration and stuff. That was supposed to be the whole premise for the TV series.
I don't think I heard that.
Yeah, I remember that. I think if we could get our friend David to come on the podcast, I'm sure he knows that stuff.
He will never do it.
Yeah, I know. But I'm sure he will comment on this eventually when he listens to the episode, and then we can bring that for another episode. But yeah, I remember there was a premise about that. I mean, and shortly after Bloodline was filmed, there were premises being thrown about the Hellraiser 5 and 6. At one point, it was supposed to be about this kid and his sister, and there were supposed to be like hundreds of Cenobites shown in the movie. And I remember this stuff coming up in Leviathan Lamentations, that newsletter that.
Oh right.
Right.
From the Hellbound Web.
From the Hellbound Web. Yeah. I remember all these rumors coming out about Hellraiser 5 and 6. So we'll address those in the next episode.
Well, they have 21 script ideas straight out of the Hellbound Hearts book if they ever needed them.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. Well, but that would be too good.
Yeah.
Well,
particularly Peter Atkins' script for the Prisoners of the Inferno, which I really liked.
I need to read those again. I read them when that book first came out, but sometime I think it would be good to do an episode about it. I think the Hellraiser podcast people their next episode is going to be about Hellbound Hearts.
Oh, neat.
So we try not to do the exact same things that they're doing at the same time. Our next one was from Paul Alexander. He said, I had heard that there were differences between the scripted and final versions of Hellraiser 4. What was among the differences, and do you think that the movie would have been better received if these differences had been included? So I think we answered most of that already, but probably still the problem is the budget, right? I mean, even if they had included everything that they'd wanted to include,
it's always the money, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I would have. The whole thing for me is I was looking for Book of the Damned to be brought to the movie screen, and it wasn't. So there was no way it was ever going to please me at all. So, again, it's one of those movies I have to look in retrospect and appreciate it on its own value. Just depart from what I was looking for and what I was, amped to see. So.
Well, your website, the Pyramid Gallery, the name is actually lifted off Hellraiser 3, the Pyramid Gallery where Joey finds all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And over the years, you've got a lot of creative people working with you to come up with these stories and researches about these Hellraiser or Lament configuration puzzle boxes. Mm-hmm. So it's reading your website is kind of like looking at an unofficial Book of the Damned in some ways.
Well, and there's some neat things that came out of this movie, right? Like the term lament configuration and Elysium configuration came from Hellraiser 4.
Actually, I think the comic book had it first. Is where the configuration came from.
Oh, really?
This is the first time though it was used on screen. Though I think was in Hellraiser IV.
Exactly. The first time they started really developing the Le Marchand character was in the comic books.
Yeah, and he was much different.
Yeah, he was evil.
Yeah. I felt what they did in the movie is that they kind of split his personality between the kind of the Disney-fied Le Marchand and then Delisle.
Yeah.
Because I think Delisle had more of the flavor of what the comic book version was about.
Yeah. Yeah, but they wanted to have a young, nice-looking actor that could play all the different Le Marchand or merchant people across the generations.
Right.
And that you could identify with.
Exactly.
But they could have easily, I think they still could have easily made him, the Delisle character, be Le Marchand. And then the other ones are trying to make up for his past evil.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that would have, to me, that would have been just, probably would have been better.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just the way they developed it. I mean, nothing we can do now, but I would have imagined it would have been great to have Le Marchand. It made more sense to make a Le Marchand that wouldn't be so naive. Like we see him create this box with his beautiful pregnant wife, ta-da, it's ready, and working for a commission, but he doesn't really know what he's doing. And then he just makes a box that just opens up and does these things. And it's more like they just use the box, like Delisle infuses the box with some kind of demonic power. Whereas in the comic book, Le Marchand, it was actually this guy who found a way to create this intricate mechanism which would actually be opening the door to hell. Yeah. And it was purposefully done that way.
Yeah, it had the whole desire trope behind it. In the comic book, much more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I always thought that it was too naive of the movie Le Marchand. It's like, I'm just making a toy, and then the toy is going to become evil.
Yeah.
Because someone made a spell on it, and
you would think he would be halfway through making this thing, and he'd be like, "Hold on, what am I doing? What is this?" And he would want to go back to him and say, "Why am I doing this again?"
Yeah. Anyway.
But he finished it before he, and he thought he was proud of it, and he didn't even know it didn't even make any sense.
Oh, and the big difference also between the puzzles and the graphic novels was the fact that they had to be made with human fat, and so it made him like one of the earliest serial killers in the world. It's a very different take on Le Marchand.
Wow, yeah, that's interesting.
He was supposed to be using this material made from Leviathan's flesh, and like we discussed this on the previous episode when we were talking about Hellbound and the connection between the box and Leviathan, and I mentioned the concepts and guidelines that were written by Dan Chichester, Eric Salzberg, and Clive Barker, where they mentioned that there's been 10,000 boxes scattered across the universe, and it's used with Leviathan's flesh and all that stuff. So, yeah, that's that would be a cool thing to put into the movie version, but they didn't.
It very much crosses over into the whole mythology of like the Philosopher's Stone and things like that. Mm-hmm. So there's all these really deep connections that were put in the writings by John Rosen.
And alchemy. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Ben Winfield asks, if Hellraiser 3 had been a hit, and I mean bigger than Freddy Krueger kind of hit, do you think that Hellraiser 4 might have turned out better than we got? Yeah, I'm sure, definitely. They would have given it more money, right?
Yeah.
I'm kind of split on that. I think at one point Pinhead and Freddy Krueger were actually pretty equivalent at one point. That didn't make much of a difference.
Well, and they're, I mean...
It was basically a matter of the producers trying to be greedy and not wanting to spend too much money. That also affected Nightmare on Elm Street, the franchise.
I mean, I mean, everybody thinks of that as as a big franchise, and it's like, but really, there's the first movie. To me, the first movie is really the only good one.
Yeah, it's genius. It's really good.
Yeah,
I did like Dream Warriors a little bit, but not quite as much as the first one. The first one was on par with the first two Hellraiser movies for me.
Well, and Freddy's not making puns all the time. I mean, all he says is like, "This is God" when he's looking at his hand. I mean, that's not goofy. That's creepy. That he's saying that.
I know.
There's so much more mystery involved in the first movie as compared to the rest. I think that's the key to even for Hellraiser for me is when you get to know so much about the Cenobites, it becomes like any movie when you know how to kill the vampire with a stake or holy water. It takes the kind of the terror and the mystery away from the monster itself. So
and Hellraiser 2 was so good because it explains a bunch of stuff, but it really opens up more questions than it answers.
Right.
Yeah. Also, the difference in tone between the two franchises is important. I mean, people have like Freddy Krueger using the power glove in one of the films. I mean, for God's sake.
Yeah. Yeah, we do have. I mean, but Hellraiser sequels are just as bad or worse.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I guess. And then Timothy Pinides says Hellraiser Bloodline was better than 3 in my opinion. I love the backstories and the whole space thing really wasn't too cheesy, unlike Jason X. In fact, I believe the scene with Pinhead caressing the dove is the most memorable Pinhead image ever.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I totally agree.
He's got a really good point. I mean, I think that it was. I think this was a more faithful movie than Hellraiser 3.
Yeah, I would say that too.
And it's I don't people think like every movie back then had to make a sequel in space, but that's not what they were trying to do with this movie. It's not fair to compare it to like Jason X or the Leprechaun in space or whatever.
It was supposed to be a logical progression of the bloodline from the past all the way into the future.
It's not like we ran out of stuff to do, so let's put Pinhead in space. I mean, which is what they did with Leprechaun and Friday the 13th.
Oh, God, Leprechaun. I saw Leprechaun in the Hood. And that was good enough for me. I never saw any other film.
Yeah, I mean, this was actually an important part of the plot. And, and I think rightfully they were thinking if we're going to kill Pinhead, let's do it so far in the future that we're not going to screw up the series for the future.
True.
Sure. True, yeah, I can see that happening. At the same time, I think to some point... No, yeah, it's true. No, they really wanted to make also 5 and 6, so they weren't trying to finish anything there. They just mentioned, we'll just put this in the future, and, it's 2147 or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
See, I'm the type of person, they could get rid of Pinhead altogether. I think they could put out a really good, artsy Hellraiser movie that would return to what Barker was doing in the first movie.
And and in the past, nobody was ever ready to do that because everybody thinks it's all about Pinhead.
Right.
But I think that now that's something that people might actually start considering.
That'd be wonderful.
I wouldn't have minded so much that they kept bringing Pinhead. If at one point they would just make the character evolve as well. I mean, the character was always the same. So it starts becoming too familiar, I guess. When you become too familiar with a monster, it doesn't,
Right.
Like for the third one, it was supposed to have all these white robe or, like a papal robe or something like that. It was supposed to be a much different Hellraiser. Pinhead. I mean,
yeah.
Well, there is a series of comic books called Pinhead that was published by Marvel, where they would follow the entity of Pinhead over the ages from early history, where cavemen, all the way into our Pinhead.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that really developed the character there, and
cool.
They could have made different. Yeah.
No, I was just saying it developed an interesting history as far as actually this incarnation type thing. I thought it was a pretty interesting comic series.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it was supposed to be an entity that would possess these human bodies, right? Called Xipe Totec.
Right.
Which actually is an Aztec god called the Flayed One or something.
And I've read... I haven't read those. I own them, but I haven't read them yet. But I've read the Jihad Nightbreed and Hellraiser crossover, and somebody calls him Xipe Totec, and he says, that's a blasphemous title that I've always rejected.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
Oh, no, that's my handle on the Hellbound forum.
Oh,
so
really?
I'll have to change that
now. Okay.
Maybe I can I'll put a little picture from the comic in the show notes.
Use the one where he's a caveman. That's really funny.
speaking of Hellraiser histories and things like that, I can't say too much about it because it's being worked on at the moment, and I've actually been sworn to secrecy until its release. But there is the history of the box is going to be revealed very soon from Simon Sace, who created the design. He's going into the mathematics of it. He has engineers working on it.
Oh, that's cool.
Fantastic.
I can't really say how it's going to be released. He'd like to keep that a secret, but he has told me some of the secrets of the box that I'm not allowed to say, unfortunately, but they are going to blow people's minds. So it's something to really look forward to.
Wow.
I remember taking copies of the box panels and cutting them up into little pieces and then trying to put them together. And, when there is a design of the engineer monster on the box, once it's solved, there's it creates this engineer figure on those Priapus face, the one that has the little cylinder that comes up. And you can see that in the actual box, because most people look at those panels and they don't think they make much sense. But there are designs there that, there's a lot of detail put into that. That's just fantastic.
Mm.
I can say there's a lot more than just the engineer.
Wow. Hey,
Wonderful.
Can you guys still hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, my thing just turned yellow for a second. Okay, and then we had one more question, or one more comment, I guess, from Adam Cruz. He said, I personally picture Clive like the writer from the movie In the Mouth of Madness, which that movie already stole the idea of the creepiest monsters from the Berserkers at one point anyway. Trying to remember, I saw In the Mouth of Madness when it came out, but I haven't watched it again since then.
I love the ending.
Me too. Did you guys know it was supposed to be a different ending?
I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, because I remember I have a Fangoria somewhere, and the ending was supposed to be different. He was supposed to be sitting down at the theater at one point in the end, and he would look to the side, and there would be this woman with the two pupils, and then there would be the monsters also sitting there, and just you'd see like this monster behind everything. And yeah, it's a really awesome film. The writer is called Sutter Kane.
Right, that's right.
I thought it was an amazing idea that the covers of the books would create this kind of like hidden message, or you would just put everything together, the covers of the books, and you would create a big image. Yeah. That was awesome. Why hasn't anybody thought about doing that? That's great.
Yeah, I'm about to go watch that now.
Yeah, now I kind of want to see it again too.
I'm going to see if it's on Netflix or something after this.
Yeah.
Was that Jürgen Prochnow that starred in that? I can't remember.
Sam Neill.
Oh, Sam Neill. That's right. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's right.
Is he was also in Event Horizon, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, where we're going, we won't need eyes to see. That's what Hellraiser Bloodline should have been. It's Event Horizon.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Actually, I was just listening to the Hellraiser podcast, and they did a whole episode about Event Horizon and how it's like a Hellraiser movie.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's even a point where Sam Neill character is dreaming, and he dreams that he sees his dead wife, and she doesn't have any eyes, and she says, I have such things to show you, or something. It's like, holy crap, that's like almost lifted from Hellraiser right there.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
All they really needed was throw the box in there and a few pinhead scenes and instant Hellraiser movie.
Yeah, well, that's more than they've done for some of the sequels.
Yeah.
Someone should make a version of Event Horizon where at the end when the reactor activates and they're all going to hell, they just cut to the Minos changing shape.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or splice the two movies together in a way that looks like it's a 2-hour-long Hellraiser movie.
That's a project for some fan out there.
Yeah.
So you were going to say something, Max?
Oh, I was just going to say another movie that's I consider part of the Hellraiser mythology for myself is Cronos by Guillermo del Toro.
Oh, yeah. Is that the one with the gold scarab or gold something?
Yeah, it's very much like it's a device that's created by this alchemist, and so it's all based on clockwork. I think he had something to do with building clocks in Spain or something like that. But
right.
Yeah, it's a really great movie. That when I watch it, I consider it Hellraiser, 4 or 5 or whatever,
What year did that come out? I've never even seen it.
Oh, yeah, that's a great movie. I think it was like 90. Let me think. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to pull it out, but it's like, I think it was maybe 99, 98, maybe earlier.
Is it Cronos with a CH or with a K?
It's just
CH.
I think it's just CRO.
Oh, okay.
Well, absolutely. Yes, you're right. It's from 93.
93.
Cronos.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll look out for that. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, you'll love it.
It's got the typical Guillermo del Toro people. It's got Ron Perlman there and everything.
Of course.
Yeah. It's this kid. He has a grandfather or something. I always thought it was kind of a twist on the whole zombie thing as well, or the vampire thing. I mean.
Yeah. It is very much.
I'll have to watch that one too.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah. I mean, I guess that. Do we have any more?
No, that was the last one. And at this point, we usually kind of go through what we want to plug for everybody. Max, the pyramidgallery.com. It's pyramid-gallery.com, right?
Excellent. Yes.
And do you have a Twitter account?
No, I sure don't.
Okay. And then Mark, I'm sorry, the pyramid, the labyrinth. What is the URL for that?
It's labyrinth.me.ht.
Okay, labyrinth.me.ht.
Yeah.
There we go. Check those places out.
Yep.
Disclaimer, I once made a research for a box on Pyramid Gallery, so I included like Rasputin and all that stuff in there. I try to
Shadow.
Yeah, I try to make it so that the puzzle guardian we see in Hellraiser would have some kind of like tenuous connection to Rasputin, and it's a fun.
I guess he does kind of look like Rasputin, doesn't he?
Yeah.
So check out those stories there. Check out the boxes. Some of them are for sale, and that's pretty cool. Check it out. Check the Labyrinth too.
Yeah. And
Max, yes. I haven't talked to you much since yesterday, but we are actually allowed now to release whatever information we want about the Paul Kane box.
Oh, awesome.
So, go for it.
Well, maybe you should do it. Yes, the Scribe box is the name of it, and the story is what you would expect from Paul Kane. It's incredible, and the artwork is by Mark Buckle, and I can't really say much more besides that it's going to be a real how can I say it? It's going to be a real it leaves me speechless. It's so good. It's such a great research that that's about all I can say right now. Mark, take it away there.
I think what Max is trying to say is the story that goes along with the designs is the part that really ties everything together, and it's just written really well, isn't it, Max? It's really good.
It really plays up on Paul's writing skills, and it has a lot to do with the written word.
That's extremely exciting, and hey, we got an exclusive on the Hellraiser, the Clive Barker cast. You heard it here first, folks. Yeah. So. Looking forward to you guys are going to announce it on Facebook or something soon?
Yeah, we're just finishing up the designs, and I did the artwork for the box, but I didn't design it. The designs were all Paul Kane's idea. He sent sketches through, and we went through it, and it's much like the original box, but it has many little secrets in there that you can sit there and try and figure out what was going on in Paul's mind while he was making it, and it ties in with his storyline that he's written for the Pyramid Gallery as well, so it should be really exciting. Amazing.
Yep. And I would also like to point out that actually one of the contributors for Pyramid Gallery is Anna Lovat, who worked for Image Animation, and she worked with Simon Sacy and Warwick Sacy on Hellraiser 2, I think.
Yes.
So she designed the Innocence configuration, right?
Yeah, the lost configuration, also known as the Innocence Puzzle.
And there are some viral videos about the whole story behind that box and the Rockefeller
Foundation.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So check out those boxes there, and it's hours of fun, I guarantee you.
All right. Well, I think we've definitely come to the end of this. Do you guys mind if I split this into 2 parts? I think that it'll one part will come out this weekend, and then the next one will be the next weekend.
Sounds good.
Fine with me. Yeah.
Okay. Because I think we're almost up to 3 hours now.
Oh wow, it is.
Yeah.
It's much better. It was great fun.
Much better than going to work.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was great fun. I'm sorry it took so long, and I'm sorry if I took over a lot of the Bloodline discussion. I just really had done a lot of notes on it.
A lot of useful information.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. I was talking about Bloodline, and I was thinking, I'm kind of like hogging up the time here, but yeah. So that was fun. Love to have you guys again sometime for other episodes. Yeah. We will be covering the Books of the Damned as well in the future. So
yeah.
I'm sure that's an episode where you guys would like to be back or something.
Yeah, most definitely.
That would be the episode where Max does more of the talking.
Absolutely.
And our next episode is going to be probably more about the Portland screening of the Cabal cut of Nightbreed. Then after that, we're going to come back to Hellraiser sequels.
Oh,
yeah.
Neat.
Yeah.
So it'll be like Hellraiser 3, Hellraiser 4, Portland screening, and then Hellraiser 5 and 6.
And then we're debating about whether we're going to do 7, 8, and 9 all in one. Maybe looking at what happened today, maybe we better not.
I'll be very critical of Hellraiser 5. I'm letting you guys know right now.
I'll be critical of all of them.
And 6 and 7 were shot back to back. No, wait, that was 7 and 8.
7 and 8 were, yeah.
So they're going to be together in the same episode. That's going to be cool. 7 and 8. I'm also going to be pretty critical of 8.
I think the movies, they all work together pretty well in pairs. Like 3 and 4, have a lot of the same writing, and Clive Barker was involved, and they were the last 2 sequels that had anything to do with the storyline, and the last 2 theatrical movies.
Oh, I have to mention something. After moving to the United States, I've just started, getting cable here, and I've been watching some TV because I'm still waiting for paperwork, so I spend a lot of time at home. But I've noticed that Trevor from Hellseeker, he's in a lot of insurance company.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I just saw him get blown up out of a house as if it was a water heater or something. So I thought, oh, that's Trevor from Hellseeker. That's really.
You may have noticed what was his name? In Hellraiser 4 is Jacques, he's in Parks and Rec.
Yeah.
Oh right, that's the guy. I thought he looked familiar.
With Poehler,
yeah. Go figure. Yeah, that's cool.
The insurance company should make a Hellraiser insurance advert. That'd be great.
That would be great. And that guy Dean Winter, he was also in that show Oz, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the one that takes place in a prison or something. Yeah.
Right.
He was. Yeah. Anyway, thanks guys. Thanks for being here. And,
hey, thanks a lot. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks. Thanks a lot too.
You can reach us on the web at www.clivebarkercast.com. We're on iTunes, so you can subscribe there, or please leave us a review. That'll help to get more people listening. We have a Facebook page, and of course, there's the Occupy Midian group that has over 6,000 members. On Twitter, we're at BarkerCast and at Occupy Midian. Our forum is www.clivebarkerfans.com/forum. The theme was by Colin Lakativa. You can find Max Lichter's Pyramid Gallery page at pyramid-gallery.com. Mark Buckle started the Labyrinth page that we talked about in the podcast. His name is, that address is http://labyrinth.me.ht. Thank you again. This was episode 40 of the Clive Barker podcast, Hellraiser IV Bloodline.